It was about 4:30 a.m. last night when I suddenly woke up feeling a sense of panic. In my groggy state, I was confused about why I felt that way. I felt that something awful was wrong, as though I was in trouble or that I had done something wrong. And then I remembered why I felt this way. I grabbed my iPhone and I checked several social media accounts. But the relief I wanted wasn't there. Something was missing. There was nobody there telling me that I'm okay. Nobody was telling me that I'm not a bad person. That's the way it felt. But what had really happened was far simpler. I had posted something on Facebook and Instagram that I was proud of. It wasn't a big deal, but I thought it was good enough for a lot of people to like it. Instead, almost nobody had noticed. Nobody said anything negative, but nobody was praising me. And a terrible, empty place inside me felt terrified that I had not gotten the approval, the praise that I needed, the praise that I craved. And that emptiness, the lack of praise and approval, left me with the horrible feeling that I was a terrible person, that I was somehow bad or defective because nobody had told me I was good. It was like needing water or food and find nothing to fill the need. If someone had told me about this in the distant past, I would have just thought it was crazy. I would have assumed that it was nothing but a terrible, egotistical need. But I know better now. This is something far worse. This was an old emptiness from childhood, the one telling me that I can never be good enough or never get enough approval. And I was desperate for someone to fill that hole with just the tiniest bit of praise. I was like a drug addict who needed at least a little bit of approval to tell me that I'm okay. And I was in a panic because nobody had happened to come along to give me a hit of the drug I needed. Nobody was giving me the praise that would let me have some temporary peace about whether I'm good enough or not. All of us enjoy praise, at least on some level. That's not news to anybody. But what I'm talking about is far more important and far darker than the happy feeling that most people get when they get praise or approval. This is something that I learned from my narcissistic father. For years, I performed well enough in life to earn the praise that I needed to keep myself on an even keel. But I didn't realize that my motivations were a bit different from those of more healthy people. I've been playing out the old dynamic that I learned in childhood. You see, back then I learned that I couldn't possibly be good enough. I lived in constant fear of being bad or defective somehow. And the only relief I found from those fears, without even consciously realizing what I was doing, came in those moments when I earned my father's approval or praise. Even though he's been out of my life for more than a decade, 10 or 12 years, I guess, and he's been dead for 6 years, that old programming is still running in my head. I haven't learned to soothe my fears, but my fears about myself, without gaining approval in ways that echo the dysfunctional relationship that I had with him. As I thought about this in bed in the wee hours of this morning, I typed out a couple of sentences on my phone so I wouldn't forget. Here's what I wrote. Quote, I use manufactured praise to save me from fear of being bad and inadequate. If I can manipulate people into praising me, that gives me temporary relief from my fear of not being good enough. That's a pretty brutal realization. I think I already knew it. In fact, I'm sure I already knew it, but I hadn't quite put it into words like that. Not consciously. But as soon as I did, I recognized the pattern that I learned from my father. A narcissist desperately seeks what is called narcissistic supply. And if you're at all familiar with narcissism, you know what that is. My father taught me to do something that was pretty much identical to what he did. The terrible thing is that I can't really enjoy people's praise and approval. I can't hear my work being praised and feel good enough about myself. I have trouble enjoying any feeling of accomplishment. Instead, praise for me is just a brief sense of relief that maybe I'm not as bad or corrupt or defective as I fear. Maybe I won't be in trouble, at least not right now, not this moment. As a result, the things that I create, whether it's writing or video or anything, film, they're more like manipulative ways to get relief from fear by getting other people to tell me that I've been a good boy. And that's a terrible thing, when I would like to be able to make things that I love and enjoy the feeling of having made something I'm proud of just for itself. For now, the terrible old programming is still there. It's still running in the background. And I probably rarely even think realize that it's there. Hiding things from you starts with self-deception, after all. I hope I can one day learn to make something that I'm proud of. Not because I'm trying to find approval, but simply because I wanted to create something I loved. And maybe when that day gets here, I can finally feel good about myself. I can finally feel as though I'm a decent and acceptable person, whether other people give me praise or not.